見ているこちら側もね、もっと細かいことをいっぱい知りたいんですよ。それでね、実はこちらのステージの方に任天堂64を用意しました。
僕もできるわけですか。
こちらね、触れますから、どうぞ2人ともこっちに向かってください。
はい、わかりました。それでは今すぐ行きます。はい。
世界初公開任天堂64、そのすべてを紹介していきたいと思います。
はい、じゃあそのすべての謎に答えていただくためにですね、今日は任天堂の宮本茂さん、そしてコメンテーターとして渡辺浩二さんにおいでいただきました。
どうもよろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。
遊ぶ前にちょっと僕の方から宮本さんにインタビューする形でですね、この機械のこの正体をいろいろとお話ししていただきたいと思うんですけれども、まず宮本さんですね、任天堂64、これハード的には一言で言うとどんなことができるマシンなんですか。
ハード的にね、
機械としては
俺あまりねハードの力自慢ってしたくないんですよね。で今名前が64なんでしょうがないんですけども、64っていうのは何かっていうと CPU がコンピューターが64なんですね。だからなんかね64っていうと絵が綺麗っていうことばっかり言うんですけど、絵が綺麗なことは当たり前で、何がすごいかというとね、計算が早いんです。で計算が速いとどういうことが起こるかというと、すごく賢いコンピュータープレーヤーが作れたり、ボールがコロコロ転がっているのがものすごくリアルになったりします。だから今までのゲーム機と新しいのを買うわけですからね、触ってて違う感じのものを作りたいというのが任天堂の考えなんです。
スーパーマリオ64ですか、歌唱ですか。これについてですね、ちょっと詳しく、まず聞いておこうと思うんですけど、
3次元のアニメーションを作りたい。でしかもその3次元のアニメーション、人形劇のようなものを自分で動かしたいということが夢でですね、でやっとこのハードでそれができるようになったっていうことですね。
これ見てて思ったんですけどね、もう画面の中どこに行っても何やってもこう気持ちがいいし楽しいっていう、その辺の作り込みって大変でしょう、やっぱり。
そうですね、実際にこう今までならね1枚の絵を描いていくわけですけどね、今度は箱庭を作ってるんですよね。
今までのゲームは進む方向が決まってて、そっち以外に行かせないようにしてその中で作ればよかったんです。これどっちにも行けるしね、今360度回ってますけど、
箱庭ですからね、木の裏に何かあったらちゃんと書いとかないとダメですね。
So the coming ITV News, when it comes to video games, the more bits the better, and the new machine from Nintendo is as good as it gets.
The icon behind me shows nothing but cloud. We're actually talking about rain this evening, tapering off, even a chance of wet flurries. If we go down to 4 degrees, it's going to turn white, so your cuddly toys might be a bit soggy.
On the weekend?
Yeah.
I better explain that he's going on a toy run.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the toys she's talking about.
Yes.
Well, we'll see what happens. I'll let you know on Monday.
Okay.
Thanks, Claire.
You know, it's not even Halloween yet, but millions of kids already know what they want for Christmas, a new video game system called Nintendo 64.
Nintendo's new game machine is 64 bits, making it the most powerful machine on the market. Herb Weisbaum tells us all about it.
Just a few years ago, this was state-of-the-art, flat and two-dimensional, with characters who had very limited movements. With Nintendo's 64-bit technology, it's a whole new game. Now Mario lives in a 3D world, and you can make him go wherever you want.
Whatever you thought about video games before, set it aside, try it. It's a whole new experience.
The N64 is truly breakthrough technology. Nintendo took the power of a $100,000 computer workstation and put it into an affordable home game machine. The result? Some of the best video games ever made.
The graphics engine is much tighter, much cleaner, and you know, it is really the kind of graphics that we had always hoped that we could see. Well, now we're actually starting to see them.
Clearly, the N64 is a cutting-edge machine, but it will debut with only 2 games. Nintendo promises 10 more by Christmas, and company executives don't seem too worried about the limited library.
The key isn't the number of games, the key is the quality of the games.
Nintendo will spend $54 million to launch its new system, the biggest advertising blitz in company history.
This is it, the power of N64.
Game players will be urged to change the system by upgrading to the N64. Pulling out all the stops, Nintendo's already sent this videotape sales pitch to 500,000 potential customers.
I mean, even from a jaded gamer's point of view, somebody who's seen thousands of games, they've done things that I've sat up and said, wow, this is pretty neat stuff. And if they can keep that up, yes, you know, I'm going to be one of the first in line to get it.
Just look what happened in Japan. The day N64 hit the market, customers lined up for hours waiting to get one. Nintendo sold 300,000 machines that first day.
Wow.
That's going to drive parents nuts.
Is it ever?
Kids are going to want it. The parents are not going to be able to find it. It's one of those classic Christmas things, and I can't believe we're talking about Christmas already.
I know. You know what? I can hardly figure out paddle pong. I don't know how the kids play this thing. You ever sat down with a kid when they start playing these things?
No, they're very good at it.
They're excellent.
Matt Michael of Elkhart plays a lot of video games, and he's simply amazed by the things this new $200 game system can do.
Get up there, fella. All right, we made it.
Most systems on the market today are 32-bit. This is 64. In short, Nintendo took the power of a $100,000 computer and put it into an affordable home game machine.
You always have to go to the experts on these things. Jacob, what do you think of this game?
Great.
It's great? What's great about it?
When you drop into the pictures.
For those of you who don't speak fluent 5-year-old, Jacob said he likes it when Mario jumps through the pictures. As Jacob noticed, the graphics are three-dimensional, and 4 different views allow you to take Mario wherever you want. Hundreds of people prepaid Toys R Us $25 to make sure they'd get a system out of the first shipment on Sunday. But what if you want one for Christmas?
Better do it now. As the closer you get to Christmas, the less likely it will be that we will have the units in stock.
People have been testing N64 at places like Toys R Us for about a month now. And if you have any doubt that this thing is fun, just look for Matt Michael. He'll be the guy who's laughing even when he's losing.
He killed you.
Yep, he's gone.
Nintendo's newest release is causing a commotion, and children aren't the only ones getting into it.
Go back over the bridge. Go over the, no, go back. Go back over the bridge. You gotta go over the bridge. The bridge.
Most stores started selling the system today, and they've already sold out. Toys R Us had the largest shipment available to the public, and before noon, they were sold out.
This is going to be the system for the year, and it's obviously going to be one of those high-demand things. It's going to be extremely difficult to get a hold of.
The difference between this game and all the rest is in the name. Nintendo 64. It has 64 bits of memory, twice the power of other games on the market.
The price is the same as their two systems, and so I think that's the other reason. People look at it and go, well, I can buy a 32-bit system or a 64-bit system, same price.
The $200 unit is expected to be in higher demand than the Cabbage Patch doll was a few years ago.
If you're coming to the store to get your hand on one of these, you'll likely end up with one of these, and they're not guaranteeing you can get one before the holidays.
Right now, our warehouse is out.
The 360-degree playing environment is part of the attraction and the challenge.
When you control him, he's kind of hard to control because he goes so fast and you don't know which way you want to go.
For some players, a little body movement seems to do the trick.
Yo, listen up. We will not live in a two-dimensional world. We won't go in one direction or dig where we can set. We will walk through walls. We will take a look around us. We will not be confined. We believe in the path of least limits.
We won't be told how to view the world.
We will experience true freedom. We will not compromise. We will live the game through our hands. We will be in control of something. We will change the system.
When the N64 was announced, we already reached a point in gaming where Super Mario was the undisputed champ. It seemed that there was nothing else that the Italian plumber could conquer. With games like Super Mario 3 and Super Mario World under Nintendo's catalog, the Super Mario series was already considered a juggernaut, and it seemed as if there was no way those games could be topped. Nintendo, the innovative company that they are, decided to create a completely new genre, and thus, the 3D platformer was born. Super Mario 64 introduced the third dimension to the gaming industry, which was not only groundbreaking for its time, but even for today. You can thank Super Mario 64 for any modern games you're enjoying, beyond just the 3D platformer. This wasn't easy to do. There were plenty of challenges that Nintendo needed to face when introducing this genre to its fans. Something Nintendo has historically done well is teaching the player the controls without spoon-feeding information. Latiku, the guy on the cloud who follows you around with his camera, and Toad, well, you know who Toad is. They help you along the way with some tips and controls, but ultimately, you're on your own. My first experience was just jumping around and figuring out the controls outside the castle. For its time, this felt incredibly realistic in a 3D world, and there was no music, just the sound of water, the birds chirping. It was perfect. Mario 64 was a true introduction to the new dimension of gaming. It was the future. Once I worked my way into the castle, I figured out that there are only certain rooms I could go into since I didn't have any stars. Once I figured out that I could jump into paintings, my adventure truly began. The first level of Bob-omb Battlefield teaches the gamer both linear progression as well as alternate routes they can take. Since all of the routes lead to the top of the mountain where the boss is, you really can't get lost. The first level also teaches the gamer the essential mechanics of fighting Bowser later on, but through King Bob-omb. You all know how this goes, just head for the back door. Mario's always been a backdoor guy.
Released in 1996 as a launch title for the Nintendo 64, Super Mario 64 was conceptualized by Shigeru Miyamoto while working on Star Fox for the Super Nintendo. While experimenting with Star Fox's new Super FX chip, Miyamoto conceived of Super Mario FX, based on the idea of an entire miniature world that utilized the chip's extra processing power. The project was then migrated to the Nintendo 64 simply because the controller was planned to have more buttons than the Super Nintendo. Production of Super Mario 64 lasted nearly 3 years, with 1 year spent on design and another 20 months on actual production. The revolutionary camera system was the first aspect of the game to be developed. After finishing the camera and switching from isometric to free-roaming 3D control, Mario's movements were all implemented and refined before levels were even created. The release of the Nintendo 64 console was actually delayed specifically because Miyamoto requested an additional 2 months to complete more stages for the game, bringing the total to 15, though far undershooting his original hope for up to 40. Considering Nintendo's overwhelming presence in and influence over the gaming market in the early 90s, Super Mario 64 became one of the most highly anticipated games of all time, as audiences and journalists eagerly anticipated Nintendo's leap into 3D. All of Nintendo's hard work paid off as their vision of a leaping, swimming, and soaring mascot quickly sold millions of copies before becoming recognized as one of the greatest and most influential video games to be seen in the entire medium. We'll come to understand how they pulled this off as we discuss what's so great about Super Mario 64.
Here we go!
Did you know? One of Shigeru Miyamoto's earliest influences for Super Mario 64 came from watching his pet hamster wander around his room. This experience likely influenced not only the size of Mario 64's stages, but its free-roaming camera as well. He was also inspired by miniature train sets and dioramas, but Miyamoto's first thoughts about a 3D Mario came years earlier while working on the original Star Fox. His team experimented with a prototype based on the SNES Super FX chip, but the technology just wasn't there yet. It ended up taking 5 more years for Miyamoto's vision to become a reality. Mario 64 was the first Nintendo 64 game to enter development. In fact, work began long before the N64 actually existed. So the developers started by making prototypes on a computer and keyboard. They didn't have a proper controller for the next 6 months, so they modified some Sega controllers for testing. These controllers were likely XE1AP Sega Genesis controllers, which had an analog stick years before the N64, PlayStation, or Sega Saturn were even conceived. About 100 different N64 controllers were developed by Nintendo R&D 3, and each controller was tested with Mario 64 to see if it was up to scratch. According to R&D 3's manager Genyo Takeda, they became more ambitious with each new controller, even prototyping a motion sensor wristwatch. The watch worked so well that they actually filed for a patent. However, when the wristwatch was playtested by a focus group full of kids, they were confused by how it worked. In the end, R&D 3 had to abandon the idea. Did You Know Gaming asked Mario 64 programmer Giles Goddard about the prototype controllers and if there was anything memorable from Nintendo's tests. Goddard said, "There was one prototype joystick I worked on that stood out. It was made by a UK company, I think, and it had the ability to programmatically constrict movement in 2 axes. I thought we could use it to give force feedback or to give texture to certain movements, but when I made some test demos with it, it felt more like it was stuck on something instead. Still, it was way ahead of its time as there was no such thing as haptics back then." Ultimately, They settled on the N64 controller we know today, even though Miyamoto was still dissatisfied with it, and actually wanted a second D-pad instead of the C buttons. The game started out as just Mario running around an empty grid, with the next character added being Mips the Rabbit. From there, the team spent months just perfecting Mario's movements and the game's camera, ironing out these fundamentals before they built even a single stage. Assistant director Yoshiaki Koizumi made nearly 250 different Mario animations, about 50 of which got cut, including a somersault that probably broke Mario's fall after a long drop. A few animations didn't get cut, but ended up virtually useless, like the crouching trip kick, which Koizumi says he made for beating specific enemies that never got programmed into the game. To test out different camera systems, developers ran experiments like creating a mountain and having Mario and Mips race to the summit, then switching the camera and going again. They tested out thousands of different camera systems, having it locked, having it move, having it so the player controlled it entirely, and so on. There was one programmer whose whole job was just working on the camera system, and one day he finally came up with a camera Miyamoto was happy with. But it wasn't long before a Nintendo lawyer ran upstairs and told them Sega had a patent for switching cameras, which sent shockwaves through the entire office. They investigated what sort of legal consequences they might face by using Sega's patent, but ultimately decided to throw caution to the wind and use it anyway, praying they wouldn't get sued, and they never did. Mario's thing.
When the N64 was released, everyone was going crazy about gaming entering the third dimension. The N64 had two launch titles, one game involving some dude in a red hat, and Pilotwings 64. I don't think I have to talk about the Mushroom Kingdom's jump into 3D and how it changed the gaming industry, because I already did. Instead, let's talk about Pilotwings 64. I like to think of Pilotwings 64 as a tech demo for the N64, similar to Wii Sports and the Wii. Believe it or not, these crappy graphics were a big deal back in the day. This game was actually considered realistic, not only from a graphic standpoint, but from a physics standpoint as well. Pilotwings 64 has not lasted the test of time. There's a handful of vehicles to utilize, from hang gliding to jetpacks. The missions involve things like going through rings, popping balloons, and destroying killer robots. The missions were very easy at first, but they can get pretty difficult as you progress through the story. The controls are partially to blame. Pilotwings has not held up that well from a control standpoint. It might have been groundbreaking for its time, but a lot of what made this game special back in '96 make it very hard to play in 2018. Some of the more fun aspects of this game include the jetpack missions and some of the bonus stages. Parachuting is fun because the controls are pretty tight as you're skydiving and making formations with your teammates. The human cannonball missions are also fun because you have to test out the wind and figure out the physics of the game in order to succeed. Don't think I forgot about the Birdman missions. These aren't exactly missions, but more of a laid-back level where you fly around and take pictures while listening to the most soothing music of all time. Barry White would have killed this track. The entire soundtrack is amazing in Pilotwings, one of the better soundtracks I've ever heard. If you haven't played Pilotwings before, there's no reason to play it now. There are plenty of flight simulators out there that have outdone it. If you want to just play it for nostalgic reasons and fly around listening to Barry White, then that's a different story. It's always fun just exploring Mount Rushmore and seeing Mario's face up there. Cool little Easter egg.
For as popular as the Nintendo 64 was, early adopters didn't have many games to choose from. Players in the United States and Europe could pick up Super Mario 64 and Pilotwings 64 at launch, but Nintendo fans in Japan got an additional launch title that was never released in other regions. It's Saikyō Habu Shōgi. Yep, we sure missed out on this one. If you're unfamiliar with shogi, it's a strategic board game that descended from the same ancient ancestor game as Western chess, and many pieces have direct chess equivalents. There's one piece that moves like a bishop, another that acts like a rook, and this one moves like the horsey. At the same time, there's plenty of additions that set shogi apart from chess. Many of the pieces can be promoted once they reach the opposing side of the board, giving them more movement options. And in what's probably the biggest difference between the two games, you can actually deploy enemy pieces that you've captured and add them to your own side. This rule in particular is what makes stalemates rare in shogi compared to chess. Saikyō Habu Shōgi is significant for a few reasons. For one, it's the first third-party published Nintendo 64 game. Seta published this one, following up on the company's many previous shogi and mahjong releases for the Super Famicom. Over in the United States, they were also responsible for publishing stuff like Castle of Dragon, Q-Billion, and that awful SNES Wizard of Oz game. Saikyō Habu Shōgi is also the first celebrity-endorsed Nintendo 64 game, since it features the likeness of a pro shogi player. The Habu part of the title refers to its cover star, Yoshihara Habu, who was fresh off of winning all 7 of Japan's major shogi championships earlier in 1996. So in terms of star power, he was a pretty good get, you know, as far as shogi players go. A year earlier, he starred in Tomi's Habu Meijin no Omoshiro Shogi, or Master Habu's Interesting Shogi, for the Super Famicom, so he was no stranger to the world of video games at this point. Now, while Habu is a master of his craft, I haven't been to chess club since elementary school, and I don't even know where to start with shogi. To the game's credit, there's plenty of tutorials and hints for beginners, and there's a mode that lets you replay matches step by step and save them to an N64 controller pack. In fact, Saikyō Habu Shōgi was the first N64 game to make use of controller packs instead of internal battery backup for save data. But, as you might expect, all the menus are in Japanese, and they use a lot of specialized kanji, so the language barrier here is pretty high. I'm not really sure how much of an improvement this game is over 16-bit shogi games either. Prior to Saikyō Habu Shōgi's release, Seta made vague promises about using the N64's processing power to produce better shogi AI, but any improvements here are lost on me. And while the board and pieces are in full 3D and can be viewed from a variety of angles, the frame rate is lower than you might expect for a game with such a simple graphical presentation. Players in Japan were also apparently underwhelmed when the game originally launched. Visiting Tokyo in 2009, games writer Chris Kohler saw one store giving away entire shipping boxes full of Saikyō Habu Shōgi, free of charge. These brand new copies couldn't even be sold when they were clearanced out at 50 yen. The game had apparently been hanging around shops for quite a while at that point. Kohler goes on to explain that whereas Super Mario 64 had a 1-to-1 sales ratio with Nintendo 64 consoles at launch in Japan, console tie-in sales for Saikyō Habu Shōgi were apparently more like 100-to-1. So it was a major flop and a blight on Japanese retailers for decades after its release. Big deal! Saikyō Habu Shōgi has exactly one redeeming feature, and it's this amazing collection of Sears Portrait Studio shots of its cover star. I love how it rolls in a different one every time you bring up the screen. I could do this forever. Man, there's a lot of these. This ROM's gotta be like 10% shogi pieces and the rest of it's just this guy's face. So yeah, aside from that one excellent feature, Saikyō Habu Shōgi is otherwise best known as Super Mario 64's forgotten launch partner in Japan. But it wasn't all bad news. Seta's work apparently impressed Nintendo, and the two companies later collaborated to develop the Alex 64, an arcade board based on Nintendo 64 hardware that powered a dozen games released between 1998 and 2003. And almost immediately after Habu Shōgi's release, Seta announced a sequel, Morita Shōgi 64, which launched in 1998 with a modem connection port on the cartridge, allowing for online play. But let's be real here, which would you rather have? Online play? Or the Habu family photo album?